And a very good morning, everybody. Welcome in to another edition of the Pattison Sports Show. I'm your host, James Schools. I'm with you, and with me, as always, is a group of companions on this very important Saturday. Joey Marks, what's going on, my brother?
Good morning, Philadelphia. Welcome in to the Pattison Sports Show. We got a lot to cover today, James. A
Yes, we
lot of
do.
news in Philadelphia sports this past week.
Yeah, we do. We were going to have on Pat Bernard on today, but I guess he decided. I wouldn't say that it was. We had him on, but I guess
Family
family
circumstance.
family came first or something
Yep,
like that, or busy schedules got in the way.
yep.
But before we go into our Chappelle today, we got the Dom himself, Mitch Kowski, joins us and says good morning to us. What's going on, Mitch? Check out Fly Like an Eagle every single Friday now. I was going to say Thursday
Yeah.
because I always think about Thursday, but it's always good to see Mitch Kowski staying busy with the Eagles, especially a couple off-season drama going to admit. But Joe, there's a lot to get to on this very impactful Saturday. So, simply put, where do we begin?
Well, we start with those Eagles, and like
I would think so.
some of the drama, some of the off-season moves. It's Howie's season, and
Yes, it is.
we've gone into a situation starting Monday. Legal tampering for free agent starts.
Yep.
We just got done the combine. We're talking. We're getting closer and closer to talking about draft. We're talking, trades. People are getting money.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of money, we had the guy that I think is possibly going to go down as one of the greatest Eagles to ever play.
Oh, yeah.
That's Saquon Barkley.
No question.
That got a contract extension with 2 years left on his contract. He got 2 years tacked onto it for an additional $40 million. Now, people
Mm-hmm.
might say, well, why are you re-signing a guy you have for 2 more years?
Mm-hmm.
Part of it is to kick the can down the road a little bit, but really it's to shore up a guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's 28. He just turned 28 on Super Bowl Sunday. This is a guy now with 4 years on your team, 4 years upcoming on your team. At the age of 32, for a running back, that's where a running back makes a hard decision. Which is, am I going to retire and just take my, ride off into the sunset, or am I going to accept the role as a backup running back?
Mm-hmm.
Now, for this intentional purpose, I think that how we wanted to extend him so that Saquon Barkley doesn't he has to make that career choice as a Philadelphia Eagle. So my question to you, James, is what do you two questions. Number one, what do you think about the Saquon extension? And then number two, what do you think about someone like Saquon potentially finishing his career as a Philadelphia Eagle?
First, I guess the answer, ask you the first. I'm sorry, I'll answer the first question first, and then I'll go into my second one. I love the move. I really do. I really thought this was a very good move that Howie tried to extend Saquon after the year he had, and I thought it was a very. I think the one thing that was really intriguing to see, especially after signing that 3-year contract last year around this time in free agency, and I'm saying to myself, okay, maybe extend it for 2 more years. It's just like this is very like ballsy by Howie gonna admit, Joe, because you think about it, because like obviously you would have thought, okay, after 3 years he probably would have been a free agent, and then okay, maybe like he'll go somewhere else, but now he's just set for life. I mean, I was hoping that he would stay longer than 3 years, if you know what I mean, because after he had the season he had, and now it's just that I mean, after winning the Super Bowl and now getting that big time extension, I mean, Howie did an admirable job keeping everybody in check. But man, I mean, it's just like this team could. I mean, I'm not going to try to jinx it yet, but if they can bring back, I mean, obviously they brought back Bond and they brought back Barkley too. The big piece of the puzzle will be what's going to happen next with Howie's style of free agency, depending on with Mekhi Becton or maybe like a Josh Sweat or Milton Williams
Right.
to see what they look like. But so far, I'm freaking excited about what's going to happen next year, Joe. No question about it.
I mean, here's my thought is that having a guy like Saquon, and look, I've already done my mea culpa. I was a critic, and this
Hmm.
guy proved me wrong by a lot. But
Yep.
here's what my point of reference and my thinking is that regardless of what you get out of Saquon, if he doesn't get to 2,000 yards ever again or whatever, you're
Hmm.
still going to have a weapon. Like, even if it's by just decoy, you're going to have a weapon as long as 26 is on the field.
Right.
And like now you have, and I kind of go back to the moves that Howie made prior to last season, which was extending Devonta and extending AJ.
Right.
Something that Howie's kind of setting in motion is making sure that he holds on to the pieces that create the nucleus
Yep.
to this team because he's trying to extend this window of success as much as he possibly can with the people that already make it a success.
Hmm.
And I think that is profound thinking on the part of Howie. And
I
look,
agree.
I understand that there's going to be criticism when we get to 2027 and 2028 and look at what Saquon's making as far as salary and go, "Oh my god, we're going to be paying this guy this." Well, keep in mind something too, that Howie's good at like once he has the guy in the building,
Hmm.
going to a guy who might be making a lot of money, and whether it's a salesmanship or whether it's convincing or whether he's got like Big Dom in the room and says, "I'll break your legs if you don't take this offer." But
Yeah.
the idea that he goes to those players and say, "Hey, I know you're making this amount of money. I get it, but
Right.
can we push that money down a little bit?" So that we can do more for the team, so we can have a better winning product on the team. You'll get the money, just can we push it down the road?
Yeah.
Howie's been good at doing that.
Did like you said, Joe, it's like Howie season, and you're absolutely right about that because you think about the last few years, obviously going back to obviously you brought up last year with AJ and Devontae, and even more so, even like players like going back like hard to believe 10 years ago, around the time when he became the GM again, and also getting rid of those players that made the team really bad. And also, I mean, obviously Carson Wentz didn't work out, and obviously like other players in between didn't work out and all that too, but the way he has constructed to make these players into better players and also how to give them a contract extension, even though he has like a few years left in his contract, it's just, man, I mean, if anybody still doubts Howie Roseman, and we know who we're talking about here, I mean, that's just like, I mean, you can't complain about him anymore. It's just that
There,
he won 2 Super Bowls. What more do you want from the guy?
there is a forward thinking to,
Yes.
to this guy, and that is going to preserve what kind of legacy this team and his legacy.
Right.
Like as a GM, I mean, we have to start to have the conversation of is Howie eligible to go into the Hall of Fame with 2 Super Bowl championships from a team that had none. Uh, that conversation is real. I mean, especially
Yeah, it
within the
is.
time frame that within a decade. Like he got
Mm-hmm.
2 Super Bowls within a decade. So that is that conversation is real. But I want to go deeper into Saquon because there's a conversation, there's a narrative that's out there that I want to clear up and I want to get your opinion on. So
Mm-hmm.
people keep saying, especially with this Barkley extension, people keep saying, okay, Saquon had this 2,000-yard season, and people keep saying, but he'll never have that kind of season again.
Mm-hmm.
And I disagree with that,
Right.
and I'll tell you why. Because all the history that these people are going off of about, like, well, history will tell you that a running back that runs for 2,000 yards doesn't like goes on a rapid decline. But the history that they're pulling from is a guy who got 2,000 yards in a shorter season.
Right.
Like, you're giving someone like Saquon an extra game. You're giving him an extra game. You're giving him a better offensive line. You're giving him, the opportunity, and like even with the rule change that's going to take place, that like what is it, like touchbacks
Mm-hmm.
will come out to the 35 or something like that. Like
Hmm.
they're moving people closer to
To the
midfield.
red zone.
Yeah, they're moving people closer to the midfield by kicking a touchback. It's like soon we're going to be like the offense is going to be starting at the 50 if you kick a touchback. It's like,
Yeah. Right.
what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Um,
What are we doing here? We got a comment here. Chad checks in and says, "What's up, Joe and James? I'm going to watch West Virginia Mountaineers. I'm going to watch West Virginia Mountaineers men's basketball taking on Deion Sanders' school. First of all, good morning, Chad. How you doing, buddy?
Morning.
Thanks for chat. Thanks for chiming in, rather. But yeah, dude, that's weird about the. I mean, first of all, the kickoff rule should go back to where it's at the 20 or 25. Let's keep it
Yeah.
real here, because I mean, now it's back to the 35. I mean, if they move it back to the 35, it's just like, why do you want to continue to create? I mean, it's been. I mean, let me say something about this kickoff rule before we go any further. That kickoff rule was absolutely ridiculous this year of how stupid that was. I'm not going to lie to you. I found it really, really absurd because, I mean, I'm not one guy that will critique a kickoff rule, but that was just really bad. I mean,
just the landing zone area.
yeah,
Like
dude,
that,
it looks some of that.
just
I mean,
seemed a little much.
yeah, I mean, and even I mean, I'm used to the kickoff, like all them kicked. I mean, all kicking on the same sideline with the kicker. I mean, the kicker by himself, it's just like, God forbid somebody like runs it back and sees the kicker like all alone. It's just like what do you do with that? I never understood it.
I had a different look at this, a perspective on this for a
Yeah.
long time.
Mm-hmm.
And they still haven't taken my idea. And like, so instead of like, so I believe when you kick off, the ball is placed at the 30, the kicker like kicks it from the 30.
Mm-hmm.
So if you move that kickoff back, and I'm saying like drastically, like
Sure.
move it back to the 10-yard line,
Right.
something like that. That kicker has to kick a 90-yard kick in order to get it to the end zone.
Exactly.
Not going to do it. I mean, I'm sorry, unless he's got like a freaking steel kick, like a steel foot, like he's not going to do it. So
yeah, I mean, David Akers was good at that a long time, but obviously I know what you're saying though too.
Right, but if you move the kicker back, then the kicker, even if he boomed it, couldn't reach the end zone. So then you got to think, now you have to merit the kicker. So like if the kicker is poor, the guy's going to receive the ball at the 40. Now, you might say, well, that's not any better. Yes, it is, because now you have to value a powerful kicker for your kickoffs. Like now you're valuing that position a little bit.
Correct.
In difference to, well, we don't care how powerful or not powerful the kicker is. If they dare put it into the end zone, we're going to put it at the 35. It's like, what
if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what I'm saying.
Well, yeah, but
yeah, I know what you mean.
I mean, here's the thing, though, James. I had this thought about moving the kickoff back.
Sure, yeah.
Like well before any of this other stuff came in.
Oh yeah,
because I just like people were complaining about the touchbacks back in like the 90s.
Right.
Like it's like, okay, move the kickoff back 10 yards. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I guess eventually they're gonna probably go into the rugby rules or the old street football. They have to throw your arm. Yeah, like Jalen Hurts has to throw the football down the field to get like for a touchback. I mean, my buddies over at Grace Fair who knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Rules.
Yeah, like because like back then there was no such thing as a kickoff, or they would just like throw the football, like 50 yards, like because it was like the old school like touch two-hand touch football back in the day too.
So for those like Chad or some other listeners that might be
Sure.
listening and are like, well, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
In our neighborhood, back when kids played outside,
Yep.
um,
Yep.
we used to play. We made up a game called. Some people called it Hail Mary. Some people called it Rumble
Yes.
Fumble.
Yes.
And what you did is there would be one player. It would be the quarterback or the thrower. They would throw it way high in the air, and there would be a group of guys like clustered together,
Hmm.
and you would have to catch the ball, and then all of a sudden, the group of guys that you were around
Hmm.
would switch and turn against you, and you would have to run to a certain end zone. Yes, it sounds crazy,
It's
but
insane.
but here's the thing. When you are a kid in Grace Ferry and you are trying to pass the time, you come up with some crazy stuff.
Uh,
But it's just
It
what
was still
happened.
relevant when I was a kid. Gonna admit, Joe. That's how long I've been in Grace Ferry for a long
Yeah.
time. You know.
Well, but
Well,
I
I
don't
wish I was, but that's
I,
another story.
I don't even know if like you remember um it was when I was a kid. So I
What's
don't
that?
know. It was a Grace Ferry game when I was a kid. So I don't
Hmm.
know if you remember it.
Hmm.
It was called Suicide,
No,
where
I don't think I heard of this.
so we used to play it. Um, so where I was, so you were two streets down from me
Sure.
on Marston, but two streets on my block of Marston, we had row homes
Yeah.
that joined together, and
Hmm.
I wanted to paint a picture for people. So then our steps for each of our homes would be kind of joined by this like little slide. It was
Hmm.
just a concrete thing, but it looked like a slide. It was like a
Sure.
little slide.
Right.
So we would get a tennis ball and we would play almost like a baseball kind of thing. You would there would be a batter, and then there
I
would be
do remember that. Yeah, I
people
do.
like kind of on the outfield, and
Yeah.
you throw the ball against the slide, and if there was some rule, like if like not if like someone caught it, but like
Right.
if someone because if someone caught it, you were out. But
Sure.
it was something like if it didn't something happened where it was like a foul almost. Like
Right.
it was a
Right.
part of like a foul in the game. And so if it was a foul, now this is where everybody listening is going to be like, you people are nuts. This is where the game gets crazy. So you got to bear with us. We were kids. Just keep that in mind. Bear that in mind, folks.
Yep. Yep.
So we would if there was a foul in the game, you would have to go against the wall, face the wall, the
Oh
closest
my god.
wall, and have your back to the players.
Yes.
And one guy would get picked out of those outfielders
Oh my
to take
god.
the tennis
Oh
ball
my
and
god.
wing it at your back as hard as they could.
Oh Jesus.
I can't tell you how many welts that were in the shape of a tennis ball that were on my back as a kid. My mom thought like I got pelted with rocks.
Oh my god, I could imagine.
But yes, I mean, look,
Yeah.
kids will be kids. But
Yeah.
getting back to the thing with Saquon and the running backs, the reason why I don't think there's going to be a drop off as much as people suspect
Hmm.
with Saquon is because well, what do you define as a drop off? Like
Hmm.
if he goes from 2,000 yards last year to 1,900 yards or 1,850 this year, do you really consider that big of a drop off? Because 1,850 is still a significant number.
Right.
I feel like you're going to start to see more and more rushing numbers for running backs in the coming years go up.
Yeah.
Because I think with that extra game in the regular season, and look, there's already talk about there being another game added to the regular season, and then
Yeah,
going
right.
down to two preseason games.
Hmm.
So now you're going to be talking about that expanding even more.
Yeah. Uh,
So it's gonna turn to be like baseball.
Sure.
You're gonna
Ghost runners.
you're gonna kind of, well, not just that, but you're gonna kind of reserve
Oh
your
yeah, yeah,
running back throughout the season. So
yeah.
Saquon could get 100 yards, 120 yards a game in one game, and then in the fourth quarter when the game's well in hand, instead of like running his stats up because of how long the season is, someone like Nick Sirianni may be like, "Yeah, no, come sit down. It's a long season. Come sit down."
Right, right.
Uh,
Chad checks it again. It says James, and I guess he's a Steeler fan, saying that hopefully the Steelers get a quarterback soon, as long as not it's not Grandpa Aaron Rodgers or old Russ Wilson. But he also said too, would it be funny that he goes back to the Seahawks because apparently Geno Smith's on the move to the Raiders.
Interesting.
Yeah,
That
I
yeah.
saw that
Well,
last night.
I would actually be surprised if it weren't the opposite,
Hmm.
because if Russ goes to the Raiders because his old buddy Pete Carroll's in at the Raiders,
Right.
so reunite them. It feels so good. Who knows?
Yeah. Um,
But
you know what gets me too about it too? I'm really surprised that I mean, I thought about Mason. I talked about this during the week too, about Mason Crosby, or basically getting that big time extension and all that. I'm thinking like his
you mean
career is
Max
gonna die.
Crosby? Max
Yeah. Oh,
Crosby?
Max Crosby. Yeah, Max Crosby, not Mason Crosby. There's too many Crosbys out there. No, but no, with Max Crosby, I mean,
Yeah.
it was yeah, I mean, I was saying to myself, damn, his career is gonna die in 2 years. I mean, he's gonna probably one out. And then they got Geno Smith, but otherwise than that, other than Crosby and other than Geno Smith, like who else do they got?
Yeah, and like that's the thing is,
You know what I
you
mean?
know, Crosby getting the kind of money that he got. I mean, good on him.
Hmm.
But like, here's the thing: the reason why they had to pay him is they don't want what's going on in Cleveland.
Right.
Like Miles Garrett is like asking for a meeting from the owner.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
demanding a trade.
that is crazy.
He's throwing a hissy fit, and like there was something and we'll get into this in a minute, but we'll get into it now. So there was something that like I had thought about, and I was listening to sports talk, and someone kind of reaffirmed it.
Hmm.
So you have this really tasty, really sexy possible player that could come on and like be game changing for your defense in
Right.
Miles Garrett. No question. Best defensive player, no question.
Yeah.
Here's where I go sideways with it. That's
Hmm.
one player. One player that yes could change the whole landscape, but the way that the defense is already situated, we're a rotation with that defensive line. Are you
Hmm.
going to want to go and give up all the assets and pay the money that you're going to pay Miles Garrett if he's only playing 50 snaps, I mean, playing 60% of the snaps? No, I'm not. I'm not going to want to. Like, but are you going to want
I
to pay
wouldn't do
all?
the deal.
What would you want to do that if he's playing 100% of the snaps? Sure, that sounds great, but aren't you going to burn him out by the time he reaches the Super Bowl
Right.
potentially?
Right.
So, what would you say if you went out and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I'm just giving you a hypothetical.
Yeah.
So, what if instead of going to get Miles Garrett, you would go and get Joey Bosa and Chase Young for the
Mm.
price of a Miles Garrett?
Hmm.
And now you have a rotation with two really good edge rushers.
Yeah, I mean that's a very actually good trade if that's the case. Because here's the thing with Miles Garrett that
Well,
I need
both
to
Chase Young and Joey Bosa are free agents.
are free agents and they're both
Yep.
young too. I mean they're both still young,
Talented. Yeah, well, they're both
talented too.
talented.
Yeah,
I mean, Joey Bosa is a little older. Chase Young's still young, but the idea that they're both really talented defensive ends.
yeah,
And like putting them into a rotation where you're looking at someone like them being mercenaries for now until how we can bring in a young edge rusher from the draft, like bringing someone up.
right.
And it's interesting. It really
Yeah,
is.
No, it is
Um,
no question.
so here's my question. Another guy that was re-signed out of the core four uh for the free agent class for the Eagles was Zach Bond, and thank God.
Oh, you
Because
have no idea.
I jump for joy. Like
Yeah, dude.
I'm a
Yeah.
linebacker guy. I was like, please, 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 please. But people like the thing that I laugh at is people are like, did he get overpaid? I'm like, no, no, he
No,
didn't. This
no.
is a guy that came from, no offense, Zach, but it's the truth. It came from obscurity and became an all pro.
Right.
And like, I don't want to lose that guy.
Yeah.
And if I can squeeze out of him every single piece of energy and skill that I can, and then in the interim, get Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
Mm-hmm.
to be ready for when Zach Bond's ready to go, then you will have JTJ and then N'Kobe Dean.
Right.
Now we're gonna talk draft, but this guy's not even like down the road. But this guy's not even coming in the upcoming draft. But I was kind of informed. I heard Ike Reese say something this week on Sports Talk, and it got my attention.
Hmm.
What's better than one Axeman? Two Axeman sons.
Wow.
Jeremiah Trotter Jr. is already on the team.
Sure.
Josiah Trotter, who will be playing for Missouri this year,
Ooh.
is also a linebacker
Ooh.
with a little bit more weight on him, and he plays opposite, not the same position, but opposite. He plays the outside linebacker position.
Wow.
Could you imagine having N'Kobe Dean
Dude.
flanked by two Trotter sons on the Philadelphia Eagles
That is crazy.
defense? So keep something in mind. Zach Bond is great for his resigning is great for what it is right now.
Right.
But in the future, there is so much potential. There's so much on the horizon. And we go back to this is what's making Howie like a genius because he's foreshadowing what could potentially happen. Look, if I'm Howie, you're setting things up perfectly for when Josiah Trotter wants to come out of college,
Mm-hmm.
that Zach Bond will be either able to be traded without a high cap hit, or you will be able to have Josiah Trotter come in and be able to learn under his brother and Zach Bond.
Yeah, that's a hell. I mean, you want to talk? I mean, man, that is crazy, gonna man. I mean, you think about it, because like you got Trot Jr., you got Zach Bourne, then you got N'Kobe Dean, and you bring in another Trotter. I
Yep.
mean, that's just like you want to talk about a big old power. I mean, this is like a team that never drafts linebackers, and now they could actually go out and actually draft another one. I mean,
Now,
dude,
now,
that is insane. I mean, we never acquire linebackers. We never draft linebackers.
yep,
I mean, that is just.
yep.
I'm actually
And now,
without words. It's
and and
insane.
and now we have another potential trotter on the
Yeah.
future
Right.
draft board for Howie. But more than that, it's not like we have to look forward to that and we have to wait to that to have good linebacker play. We get
Right.
Zach Bond. We get this guy that's already an all pro that we can watch and enjoy until then. Until
Exactly.
then, that's the difference. There's not going to be this drastic drop off and linebacker position like there has been in the past. Howie has learned from this just doesn't work if you have that much of a drop off. But how
Sure.
can I make this work within reason?
Hmm.
And like this is where I am like a strong proponent that with Zach Bond, not only I'm going to say this, and it's going to be a bold prediction, and I get it, and it's going to be laughable and everything. Zach Bond will be your defensive player of the year next year.
I could see that. I could definitely
I
see that.
I think this guy is so like focused. He's such a leader. He's such a good locker room dude. But
Yep.
more to the point, the guy that you talk about with Jeremiah Trotter Jr. and him being like the guy learning under him. Jeremiah Trotter Jr., there's already been reports that he is going into a heavy regiment this offseason
Mm-hmm.
of putting on weight or putting on
Right.
muscle.
Right.
The goal that they want to get him to is 20 pounds of muscle. They
Wow.
want him to put 20 pounds of muscle on his frame by this time by September.
Damn.
This guy, like, these guys are going to be destroyers.
Yeah.
They're just going to be destroyers.
Yeah, I could see it.
But one of the things I want to get to as far as off season and regiments and stuff, it's been something that's been highly talked about. I think it's a much to do about nothing. I want to get your take on it.
Yeah.
Darius Slay was released. As much as we have Zach Bond being re-signed and Saquon being extended, we also had a cut.
Mm-hmm.
Darius Slay was released.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know that just because they cut that player, doesn't mean that they're not going to try to re-sign him for cheaper.
Yeah, I think they did this a couple years ago too.
Fletcher Cox was the person they did, and it was so odd how they did it with Fletcher because they cut him one day, and then 2 days later he re-signed for cheaper. I'm like,
yeah,
what was that about? And I'm like, I get it, you saved money, but that just seemed like a weird runaround.
Mm-hmm.
But Darius Slay has been officially cut by the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right.
But he was on his podcast and he discussed who the next leader should step up into the leadership role on the Eagles defense if he doesn't come back. And he mentioned Reed Blankenship. So CJGJ got a little bent out of shape about that.
Yeah.
And there's something, this is the reason, and I'll get your take on it, James. This is the reason why I feel like it's a much ado about nothing.
Yeah.
If you listen to what Slay says in word for word form, he said, the next guy who I think is going to step up into a leader is Reed Blankenship. Step up means that he's not a leader now. CJ's already a leader. How are you going to step up into being a leader if you're already one?
Right.
Like, I think CJ felt like slighted because he didn't feel like Slay didn't publicly hand him the baton.
Right.
To be the leader. To hand him the torch for the defense.
Right.
Dude, you already got the torch.
Right.
Stop trying to make something that it isn't.
Exactly.
We heard you on Mic'd Up at the Super Bowl. We heard the type of vocal leader you are. You don't need to prove anything.
You don't have to emphasize it.
Right. You don't have to stick your chest out on Twitter. You don't have to be, anything like that. We know you're a leader. You should know you're a leader.
Right.
Slay is basically saying that Reed Blankenship, as a young player, he thinks is the next one to take that next step into being a leader and a vocal leader in the locker room. That's what I think Slay meant. James, I'll let you respond. What do you think Slay meant by his comments?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you think about what CJGJ is trying to make it out to be and also what Slay's making it out to be. I mean, I think right now it's probably a little bit of a Harry High School stuff like AJ Brown alluded to on Twitter a couple days ago, saying that, I mean, you think about it right now, obviously what's been going on in the day and age of the reality. I mean, there's like a lot of like, I guess you can call it the Real Housewives of Philadelphia wise, or like the sports scene, because of obviously what's been going on in other particular sports scenes, obviously with Charles Barkley and ESPN and yada yada yada. But no, all joking aside though about that too. I mean, I'm not too worried about. I mean, the one thing with CJGJ, I mean, he's like I said, he don't have to show he has to be the leader because he's already the leader. Because
Yeah.
I think the other thing too is that, I mean, sure, he was like a little bit bothered by saying that Reed Blankenship should be the leader of this team and all that, but the question is though, I mean, he don't have to show. I mean, like I said, he don't have to emphasize like him being a leader because he's already been the leader.
Yeah.
And
Like,
I
what
think
what is he stepping up to? Like,
right.
that's the thing. Like, stepping up means that this guy's moving. Like, the response, the question was, who's moving into a new role?
Yeah.
CJ's not moving into a new role. CJ's got his role.
Yeah, I mean,
He's a leader. He's a vocal leader.
like it's kind of like when we had like in the early 2000s with Dawkins, like he obviously was a leader, but
Yeah.
then you had Troy Vincent who was a leader, and then Bobby Taylor was a leader.
Right.
I mean, it like the whole. I think it's just. I think it was just because like it's a dead time in the sports world for Philadelphia. Not for Philadelphia. Well, it kind of is in Philadelphia, gonna admit, especially what's been going on with the Flyers and the Sixers. But more importantly than that, I think they were just. I think it was just more of the factor is that I mean, they're not seeing each other. I mean, they just won the Super Bowl, and now they. I mean, I don't know if they have a beef with each other. Like, God forbid if they have a beef with each other all this time going up to this Super Bowl point, and I'll be a little bit annoyed because obviously I'll be like thinking like this team was so like they were so unique and it was so like they came together as a like one team and all that. I mean, if that, I mean, it's not troublesome. I'm not going to say it's troublesome, but it is kind of annoying that somebody like CJGJ is like really taking that into an account and trying to make it into something that it's not. And I think the other thing too is that, I mean, Slay wasn't like trying to take out anything CJGJ out of context. I think he was just trying to say, like, he was just trying to keep it real. Like Blankenship is the leader. I mean, I'm not saying that you were a leader, but I'm just saying that he is one of the leaders, if you know.
Right.
What I mean.
Well, I mean, even like Slay said, he was part of like the leadership committee or whatever he was saying in that, like that there's a group of leaders. Like, it's not, just one dude.
Exactly.
But you know what they need to do, James? You know what with CJ and Slay need to do, and Reed need to do? CJ, GJ, Darius Slay, Reed Blankenship, and maybe even James Bradbury. We'll throw him in for good measures. They all need to go out and play some golf.
Yes, they do.
But they need to get golf clubs first.
Yep.
Where can they go get some really quality professional golf clubs?
Yeah, Joe, today's show, like you mentioned, is sponsored by our friends over at PGASuperstore.com. PGASuperstore.com is now leveling up your game for especially off-season, especially if Slay or CJGJ wants to go golf club, go golfing and all that, but don't miss out. They got an exclusive opportunity to get your hands on premium golf equipment, including hats, golf clubs, golf tees, and more at PGATourSuperstore.com. Scan the QR code at the bottom right of your screen the bottom left of your screen rather, and tee off today with PGASuperstore.com. That's at PGASuperstore.com today. It's in the hole.
Yes. Maybe if they whack a couple balls, they'll stop whacking each other.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny though too about I get a little bit of a pun there. Kind of like there was a thing on Grand Theft Auto 5. You actually can play golf, and it's kind of like what they're doing right now. They're just attacking each other. Like it was like Trevor or Mike or even Frank were like just attacking each other on the golf course. How bad it is, but that's another story for another time. But yeah, I mean. They should go out and golf, like swing some golf clubs. I mean, be like Rodney Dangerfield, just like joke around once in a while, have some fun.
Have a couple beers,
Sure.
go on a golf club, go to a golf course, go to Marion or whatever,
Yeah. I mean, hey,
and
look,
go,
this golf course is down at the lakes at
you
FDR.
know,
You
yeah,
can go down there and like tee up some golf. Uh,
absolutely. Well, we're gonna go and hit another type of ball. We're gonna go to baseball and go to your Philadelphia Phillies, who are still in spring training, but a lot of different news have come out because of some of the interviews that had happened on WIP this past week. Um, James, I gotta ask,
sure.
the conversation is starting to flirt more and more that Bryce Harper, despite maybe his wants and needs, maybe moved from the 3-hole to the 2-hole. There's talk about the idea that Schwarber might be playing first base here and there. There's talks of Trey Turner does it, like Dave
Being a leadoff guy.
Dombrowski was talking about that Trey Turner is not a fixed person in the shortstop spot. So, there's a lot to kind of unpack
Hmm.
about a lot of these different things. The first thing I'm gonna,
And little time to despair too, Joe.
what's that?
I said a little time to despair too, especially like season starting up in like 3 weeks from now.
Yes,
3.5 weeks gonna be
yes,
actually not even 2 weeks, not even
and
3 weeks
and the
away.
and the end of March,
Yeah.
opening day in Washington's end of March. So, yeah, you don't have a lot of time to kind of figure out some of these questions.
No.
Uh, but the one thing that, I think stood out to me is that everyone's messaging from the Phillies, from the players to the management to like Dave Dombrowski, it all seems to be the same. The reason why they ran it back is because they feel like they have the talented players and they feel like these guys want it more for each other, and just adding new pieces wouldn't have solved the problem uh, in a wholesale way. Like
Hmm.
adding a Soto would have been great, but would it have made sense to do it? The other part of this is I look at like what free agents were out there outside of Soto and some of the pitchers and whatnot. Like there wasn't a ton, not
No.
offensively.
No.
So, not that stood out. Like, and so for me, it's like you have to look at it. We could overpay for one guy and jump on that.
Hmm.
We could get a couple small bits and pieces and overpay for those guys,
Right.
or we could fill what we think, like we could bring in who we think would best fit
Hmm.
and run it back.
Right.
And the Phillies did the latter. So my question to you, James, is this: if Bryce is willing to be, you know, interchangeable, if Bryce and Turner are willing to be interchangeable with some of their, I guess, idiosyncrasies, like Turner with playing the shortstop position and Bryce wanting to stay at the 3-hole,
Hmm.
like if these guys are willing to be movable, what odds do you think that? How do you think that improves the Phillies' odds on winning?
Not by much, Joe. I don't think it's going to be that much because you think about it. I mean, I'm one guy that I've been very skeptical about this Phillies team going back to the last series that they played against the Mets last year in the NLDS. And I would have thought this would have been a great time. I mean, look, obviously Soto was the big time market player and also maybe a couple players in between. But I also heard that Vladdy Guerrero Jr., like, there was a possibility that the Phillies could probably bring him
Right.
in and all that too. But the thing
Kyle
that
Tucker. Kyle Tucker was
Kyle
another one.
Tucker, yeah, right. Yeah, right. And even like Alex Bregman too,
Yep.
depending on if they were like looking for a third baseman or something like
Yep.
that too. But the thing about it too that bothers me even more about this is just that like this team is looking like they're going one step closer to being I wouldn't say that the firepower that they had back in 2022 is going to start to change, because I think the other thing that really bothered me about it is that, yeah, sure, you have like you're debating I mean, we'll debate about the Trey Turner and the leadoff spot, probably either today or probably in future shows and all that, because I got a lot to say about that too. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack with this Phillies team, and like I said, it's only 3 weeks away until their actual first game of the season. And then now hearing that Bryce Harper, like, if they would have got Pete Alonso and Harper would have been okay if he was moving back into the
Right.
outfield and all that.
Yeah, I heard this too. Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing that bothered me about it too is just that it's like there's like so much holes on this team that I'm starting to think that this is like actually starting to feel like similar to what the Eagles had in 2004, like with the TO situation. But the difference is we're not going to see Bryce Harper doing sit-ups on the driveway and the whole 9 yards about that too. But like I said, there's a lot. I wouldn't say there's a lot of drama, but there is a lot to unpack with this Phillies team, and there's a lot, and there's not a lot of time to talk about this, especially getting ready for an upcoming season in the next couple weeks or so.
Here's my thing. You bring up the 2004 Eagles, and I'm glad you did, because it's been something on my mind too.
Sure.
There's been this, I guess, narrative, this talk about, well, if you run it back with the same core, it seems like they're regressing. How can we have hope that they're going to be a World Series contender?
Right.
And you bring up the 2004 Eagles, and that nucleus, that defense, that team overall was together for a bit, defensively especially.
Yeah.
And you would think in like that sport, when you don't make drastic additions
Right.
to like the defense, or drastic additions to the team, and you just keep running back similar, like a
Similar
core
walls.
nucleus. Yeah, like the similar faces,
Sure. Yeah, right.
We got used to Brian Dawkins and Jeremiah Trotter.
Sure.
We got used to Westbrook, and we got used to Donovan, and we got used to Pinkston, and all we got used to all these guys that were here for a long time.
Sure.
Familiar faces. Because the Phillies have familiar faces, and this is the 4th year of those familiar faces, it feels as though the narrative is, why should we have faith in these familiar faces? You bringing up the 2004 Eagles reminds me that despite us having those familiar faces in the Eagles, and maybe despite people thinking, man, we keep going back to the NFC Championship game, or we keep getting this far and just can't get it done. And then 2004, despite losing in the Super Bowl, they got past the NFC Championship game. They got into the Super Bowl. They kind of broke that barrier. It may not have been the finish line we wanted, but it was the finish line that I think the Eagles felt like they needed. For the Phillies, I feel like much is the same.
Yeah.
Like maybe the finish line they need is the World Series championship. That getting over the hump. That we did it.
Finally, huge sigh of relief.
Right. The idea that these guys can do it. And like Kyle Schwarber brought up something to this week too. So Kyle Schwarber, he's I think he's like 29 or 30.
Sure.
He's been in the league for a while. He's gone to the playoffs, the postseason, every season but one of his career, which is impressive.
Yeah.
But he's only got one World Series ring. What does that tell you? It tells you that it's difficult to win.
Yes.
But like, my feeling is with this team, they all know that now. There's nothing that needs to be said to any of those players in the locker room. They know what their job is. They know how they have to step up and do the things that they need to do. What the goal. Rob Thompson doesn't need to go in there, and Middleton doesn't need to go in there and say, "Hey, our goal is to win a World Series." They know that.
Right.
That doesn't need to be said.
Yeah.
Like, my point is that maybe familiarity with each other, that having that bond will galvanize and strengthen this team rather than how other people feel like it's just the same old dog and pony show.
Exactly.
But what if it's a dog and pony show that has learned together?
Yeah. And you know, and
That's a possibility too.
and that's the thing too that you bring up too is that, I mean, I heard about what Schwarber said about how he's frustrated that we can't get to the pinnacle of it,
Mhm.
but frustration can go so far. I mean, this team should be angry coming into this season. Angry the fact that 3 years ago you were in a World Series and you lost it. Angry that you lost an NLCS and angry that you lost an NLDS. Now it's just now. That's why I brought up the 2004 Eagles. It's like now, okay, now you have to win it now. Like you've been here before, you've been here 3 times already. Now you have to put up or shut up now, because this is the thing that drives me crazy about this Phillies team. And I hear Bryce Harper saying, "Oh, I saw the Eagles win a Super Bowl, and I want to be in the I want to see a parade down Broad Street next, and hopefully we will win it." But I get all that. I get how that they are anticipating, hopefully trying to become the next like World Series team and also another juggernaut. But 3 years of like disappointment and 3 years of disintegrating
Well,
baseball.
let's take that word off the table. Let's
Yeah.
take juggernaut off the table
Okay.
because
That's true.
they can't be a juggernaut
Unless you win it.
if they can't get to the finish line.
Exactly. No,
like
I agree. I agree.
The Dodgers right now are the juggernaut.
They are the juggernaut. Yes, indeed.
So, but like what the Phillies need to keep in mind, and this, I hope I'm right. I mean,
I want to be right too, Joe.
I hesitate, but I want to be right in the sense of this Phillies team. If we recall what happened this past season with the Eagles, we said that from beginning to end this season, it seemed like the Eagles were just about business.
Exactly.
It was just business. It was business like when they went to New Orleans. It was business like when they whooped the Chiefs' ass. It was business.
Right.
It wasn't showboating. It wasn't gloating. It wasn't, oh yeah, we got this and like, all that. It was, we're business.
Yeah.
If the Phillies, you talk about being angry. If the Phillies get angry, quote unquote, by taking care of business, by just going into this season and going into every single game like it's business.
Exactly.
Like we don't have to put our ring finger in the air like Castellanos did a couple of years ago.
And they came back and bit them.
Right. We don't have to stare down people for what they say about us in a locker room. We don't have to do any of that. We just have to go and be businesslike. Go do what you can do. Go do what you know you can absolutely accomplish doing. And let the rest play itself out. Like let the talking heads talk. Let everybody let it be you versus everyone else.
Yeah, Philly versus everybody.
We all we got. Like, okay.
Yeah, right.
Embody that. You guys are being really ridiculed, criticized, second guessed, all of it. You guys are all of that's coming your way.
Absolutely.
And it has since the last season's end. So embrace that. Galvanize together and say, look, no one outside this building believes we have a chance.
Yeah, and it should piss you off.
That should make you angry enough, not where you're throwing stuff, but that you're going out onto the field, going out to the diamond and doing business, just doing it.
Look.
Like, you're absolutely right. Like when the Eagles in 2004, the feeling was, man, just get over the damn hump.
Right. Right.
It's kind of like how we feel about the Sixers.
Yes.
It's like when they were good, it was just get past the second round. Just get past the second round. This Phillies team, it's coming to a boiling point.
It is.
Where it's like, okay, you got it. You got all the pieces you need. You're happy. You're satisfied, whatever. Go do it. Stop talking about it. Be about it.
Just do it.
Right. So I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask. Next week we're going to have Joe Sullivan on our show as our special guest. But when other guests come on, I'm going to start asking them leading into the season and even the beginning of the season. But James, I'll start with you. I
Mhm.
want to get your prediction, your wins prediction for the Phillies for this upcoming season. I want to get what you think they're going to do as far as wins. Give me a number.
I don't think it's going to be 90 wins again, Joe. I don't think it's going to be 90 or 90 plus because I hate to say it. Look, I love this team. I do. I really, really do. But the last few years, obviously, you thought about, like I brought up in 2002, 22, I mean, and 23, 24. They could probably win maybe 85, maybe 85 plus if that's the case. And if they get to that point, I mean, you think about like usually the last couple years, like they got into the postseason. I mean, winning the NLDS, I mean, not winning the NLDS, winning the National League division title will be something to be accomplishing it. But I think the one thing that the Phillies need to do is go back to that 2022 feel is that obviously they got into the last week of the season, and then after that, everything just started to go completely crazy, and there was a bedlam at the bank. Red October was back in full force. But that's what needs to happen with this team this year. Don't worry about the NLD. Don't worry. I keep on saying NLD. Don't worry about the National League East. Don't worry about everyone because it's going to be either the Mets or the Braves going to be winning that. Just get into the postseason because once you're in the, I mean, you think about all the times the Phillies were NLCS, were in the NL, winning the National League Eastern Division title every year, and they lost to a Cinderella team like the Giants and then the Cardinals. But then they had that same kind of feel in 2022 when they were the hottest team in baseball.
Yep.
And I think the one thing they need to do is to have that same firepower. It's like, no one's going to give us a chance. So let them think that because we're going to sneak on you and we're going to beat the bleep out of you.
So I'm going to touch on the division because I think that's important.
Absolutely.
But I'm gonna give you my number, and it's kind of gonna go the opposite a little bit of you.
Okay.
I'm at 93 wins.
Okay.
I think
that's fair.
I think this team in some way, and I'm not disagreeing with you as far as I think those wins are going to be more pitcher based. Like I think
Correct.
the pitchers are going to have going to be mainly responsible for a lot of those victories.
Mhm.
I really don't think this is going to be like a 10-7 wins. Like they're not going to blow teams out of the water offensively.
Well, you think about it too. I don't mean to interrupt you, but you think about it too. The one thing I said about like 85 or plus is because depending on what the bullpen does too. But
right, and like that's the other thing too. But like this team doesn't give me they might not blow teams out of the water, but like yeah, sure, there'll probably be a game here and there where they will. But like my feeling is if these starting rotation, I mean I can't believe that Rob Thompson said this on air, but he mentioned I don't know how this would work. But if Painter is planning on coming up, Andrew Painter is planning on coming up in June.
Right.
That would mean that there's a 6-man rotation, he said.
Oh God.
What? No.
Why?
No, stop.
Why?
We don't need a 6-man rotation. We need 5 solid starters. You put the other guy as a long relief arm in the bullpen. I don't care if he never if our 5 solid starters go 7 innings and you never need that long relief guy, you send him to like AAA and have him pitch a simulated game.
Right.
Whatever. Like you don't throw off your rest of your rotation because you have an influx of starting pitchers. No, you're not. Don't reinvent the wheel.
No, don't. No, it's just.
Leave
oh
it
my
alone.
God.
So
that's the thing, Joe. I mean, it's just that I mean, look, I understand you want to put Painter in that like the starting five, but 6 is like if you don't like, it's kind of like you say, it's kind of like the old saying is with the Flyers, like once you have like 3 goaltenders, you don't have a starting goaltender. It's kind of like the same,
Yeah.
like same kind of cohesiveness with the Phillies. I mean, if you don't have like a top 3 starters, then you don't have top 3 starters. I mean, I'm not saying it's going to be top 3, maybe in future references, but maybe I mean they're probably
Well,
just saying, I don't know.
let
That blows my mind. I don't
let me
understand it.
let me go this way so to explain what James is saying about the 3 goalies.
Sure,
The
yeah,
reason why you don't want 3 goalies is because you're never going to give that 1 or 2 goalies enough time to get acclimated to the game.
right.
Game speed, being able to see the angles, being able to pick up the puck. Like
Hmm.
if they play one game and then they take 2 weeks off, you can't expect that goalie to come back in and play well because
Hmm.
they've been out for 2 weeks.
Right.
When you have 6 pitcher rotation, pitchers are creatures of habit. They're routine oriented. And when you're trying to like change that around, you are then gonna mess up someone like Zach Wheeler. You don't
Yes.
want to. You don't want to do that. You
Yes.
want to. You want to make sure. Look, I'm glad that we have all these talented pitchers. I am,
It's fantastic.
but there's no reason to try and reinvent the wheel to make make better light of it.
Right.
What one of the things I would say, and that's one of the reasons why I put us at 93, because I look at that starting rotation and I ask myself, okay, how many of these guys can go 5 or 6 innings? All of them. How
Right.
many of these guys could go 7? Then that list starts to dissipate a little, and that's
Right.
fine. But once you get to 7, like that 7th inning, if you're then relying on your bullpen for 9 outs,
Yep.
you better, as a professional ball club, you better be able to have enough firepower in the bullpen to get 9 outs.
You think
Like
about
that
it
just
too.
seems reasonable to me.
And you think about it too, Joe, because like I brought up the early 2000, the early 2010 Phillies. Like you think about when they had what Hamels, Holiday, Lee, and the list goes on and on.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they had like Chad Durbin in the 7th, and then they got Ryan Madsen in the 8th, and then they got or
Yeah.
Scott Air in the 8th, or Brad Litz to close it down in the 9th. And that team was absolutely unique about that too. And that's what has to happen here too.
Well, and you got to remember, the other part of that team was that you had a left-hander specialist with JC Romero.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's
like
right. Yeah, I forgot about JC.
so
Yeah.
you had JC Romero as your left-handed specialist, and then you had all the guys you mentioned. And yes, exactly the way you said it. It was okay, if Cole gets us to 7, we have this guy, then this guy, then this guy, and it sets up perfectly for what Charlie wanted to do.
Yeah.
And Cole, we both know, like Cole could have been like, I could pitch to 8 or 9. Well,
Correct.
sure
Yeah.
you could, but we don't want that right now. We don't need to reinvent that. We
Yeah.
need you to get us 6 strong innings and get us into the 7th inning. That's what we need.
Right. Brad
And,
Myers was like that too.
right, and I also kind of go into like with this starting rotation from top to bottom. There's very little that like a team can say when they come in and go, all right, well, we're facing their 4 starter.
Hmm.
Okay, so you're facing Luzardo. Shit.
Right. Right.
Like, what the hell? Like, that guy's not supposed to be that good.
Yeah.
Luzardo could be a number 2 starter in some people's rotations.
Yeah.
And then you bring up Andrew Painter. Now you bring him up, and now you're looking at like Luzardo being your 5. Ranger may be going to the bullpen. Now Luzardo's your 5, Painter's your 4.
It. I mean, you don't have like
It's
time to
just
waste here. I mean, it's like I said, like I brought up earlier with the drama that's going on with with Topper and X, Y, and Z. It's just like it's just that. I mean, this is something that you should be doing in February, trying to figure out, like
but,
trying to put your ducks in a row.
but
Who's going to be
my point is they have their ducks figured out to a point with their rotation, with their starting
absolutely,
rotate. Fine. And then
absolutely,
Painter's going to put a little bit of, you know, put a monkey in the monkey, put a monkey wrench into things, but it's a good monkey wrench. What you have to figure out, because this is the thing that has kind of been the bugaboo for the Phillies the last 2 seasons. You can't let those bats die.
No.
You just can't. You got to figure out, even if they start to, what is the spark that we can go to, the go-to thing that we can go to get those bats going again.
Right.
And like that's what the Phillies really have to work on.
I
Is
agree.
that they have to figure out, obviously it's a long season. Bats are going to go cold. We get
Sure.
that. But then figure out, let the season be a practicing ground to figure out the right strategy to alleviate when those bats go cold. How can we spark it back up again? Is it bunting? Is it, you know, shortening up our swing? Is it, looking for just specific pitches? What is it? There are strategies out there, but if you're not focused on it, if you're not focused on putting the best lineup out there to accomplish that, I don't know what to tell you. I mean,
Yeah.
it just astounds me. I mean, there's, and you go back to the '08 team.
Yep.
People go, well, how were they able to be so successful day in and day out? Because they had a lineup that could attack you in so many different ways.
Yep.
You had J. Roll and Shane that could just pick you apart with singles and doubles. Then you had Chase and Ryan and like Jason Worth and whatnot that
Yep.
could just destroy you with home runs or doubles or whatnot. And then you had Chooch that was a stalwart behind the plate, and a guy in Pat Burrow that would be able to take pitches.
Yeah.
So you have to understand, your lineup can't just be home run guy, home run guy, home run guy, home run guy. It has to be people that can do certain things well.
Yes.
And you can't just say, well, he can hit the ball out of the ballpark well. Okay, we have 5 of them. Like that's great. But what else do we have?
Well,
Like
that's the thing too, Joe. Because you think about it, because this Phillies team, I mean, like you brought up with the 2008 team, is that even like many years after that, with Victorino and J. Roll and
yeah,
Howard and all that included, I mean, they were not home run guys, but they got the job done. Like
yeah.
and that's, I mean, with this Phillies team, like obviously it's a different day and age of baseball, and everybody wants to hit that 5-1 homer every single time, and there's no
Right.
such thing about like a hitting coach trying to tell you, okay, you have to do this with your swing, and like I mean, Topper does a good job with that. I'm not, but then sometimes he forgets how to do that once in a while, and like people go back into that funk again.
Well, you know what? I'm excited for the Philly season. I'm excited to
I'm
see what.
I'm anxious to see what they will look like, though.
Yeah, I'm anxious, but I'm excited because in my mind, uh, I want to see what the hype is now. I want
Yeah,
to see what because these guys are saying we've worked hard to improve our game. So I want to
would
see
hope
that.
so.
I'm gonna hold their feet to the fire. And if you want to go see the Phillies too, you can with our great sponsors at Game Time. Tell them more about it, James.
Yeah, Joe, today's show is sponsored by our friends over at GameTime.co. Calling all busy Phillies sports fans need tickets last minute. GameTime.co got you covered for all of your Phillies tickets, especially when this season starts in the next couple weeks or so. You can check out your seat view before you buy and can snag on great discounts and so much more at GameTime.co. But remember to scan that QR code at the bottom of the left of your screen next to Kyle Schwarber, and scan that QR code and visit GameTime.co today. That's at GameTime.co today, and let's go Phils.
Yes. So we're gonna wrap the show with a little bit of puck talk. There's been some movement with the Flyers. Um, Scott Lawton is no longer a Flyer, and
Yeah.
that hasn't been a phrase uttered in Philadelphia ever until this past Friday. Um, Traded to Toronto. Now, James, you're gonna have to correct me if I'm wrong. traded to Toronto for a first round pick. And the
Really?
Flyers traded Scott Lawton and a 4th round pick to Toronto for a first round pick and a 21-year-old Russian right winger.
Hmm.
So, here's my thing. It was a little bit of a salary dump, not much, because the Flyers had to retain some of Scott's salary in order
Hmm.
to complete the deal. But
Right.
my feeling is my highlight out of the trade was that, and you also sent Kuzmenko with him.
To the Kings, yeah.
Yeah. So my thing is this. Yeah, Kuzmenko gave you a 3rd round pick from the
Oh,
Kings.
okay.
So the my thing with Scott Lund is that it wasn't just the salary dump. It wasn't just like getting rid of him. It was the conditional 1st round pick you got back. It
Hmm.
was that 1st round pick that you got back. In the upcoming draft for the NHL, your Philadelphia Flyers. I heard this. I just blew my mind. I want to play like in this role and as Danny Briere right now. But your Philadelphia Flyers in this upcoming 2025 NHL draft have 7 picks in the first 2 rounds.
Whoa.
3 in the first round, 4 in the second round.
Damn. That
Danny
is
Danny Briere, I applaud you, sir.
damn. I'm not gonna kid you. I was thinking about this last night when the Flyers were doing when I was with the Flyers in the offseason, and not in the offseason, but the trade deadline. And I said to myself, I'm not disappointed what Danny Briere has done. And then you tell me this bombshell, and I'm thinking like Danny Brier's pulling a little bit of a Howie Roseman. I think I like it. I
Yeah.
like it, dude. I mean, I always liked Danny Briere when I was like a big fan of his, and it's continued to show that he's continued to show me that he is a very good GM. And look, I was skeptical about Briere and Jonesy, gonna admit too. Because there was, I mean, you think about the echelon with the former Flyers and all this and X, Y, and Z and all that, the whole 9 yards where I'm gonna go with that.
Right.
But the thing too is just that 7 picks in two rounds. That is crazy.
And
That is insane.
and there's more. So
There's more?
there's more. So here's the logic to it.
What's that?
You still have Rasmus Ristolainen on the team. You still
Love it.
have Coots on the team. You still have some guys that are kind of dangling out there as kind of trade bait. They're not going to trade now because the deadline's over, but doesn't mean that they can't trade at the draft.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the logic that I would use. So having 7 picks in the first 2 rounds is amazing, no doubt. But you're not going to pick 7 players. What I would rather do is take 2 of those second round picks, maybe a 4th or a 5th round pick, maybe someone like a Rasmus Ristolainen, and
Mm-hmm.
go and get another first round pick for this year. And maybe a first round pick for this year, and maybe a 3rd round pick for the next year, because
Mhm.
then I'm looking at 4 first round picks this year, and
That's insane.
then still having 2 second round picks this year.
You-
So you're only losing 1 pick, really.
You know what's crazy, Joe? I never thought I would say this about Danny Briere too, is that when would you ever see the Flyers have that many picks in the draft? I mean, I would understand maybe like Bobby Clark, maybe Paul Holmgren could do something like that. Like Hextall, forget about it. Same thing with Chuck Fletcher. I mean, this is just like I think in the next couple of years or so, if they don't go for it this year or next year, they're gonna be locked into 2026, 2027, dude.
Well, we know one thing too. We know that they've been doing this. Isn't like they got all these first round picks for this
For
year.
spite.
No, well, we know they didn't get all these first round all these picks just this year. Like they haven't got them all this year.
Right.
They've been working to get them for this year.
That's
Now,
crazy.
Here's why I think that is. I think they know who's coming out that they are looking, that
Right.
they're targeting. So when they see that, they're like, we gotta get a lot of picks for this year. Like,
Yeah.
I want this guy, I want this. Like, they start going down the list of the potential people that are coming out this year, and
Hmm.
they're like, I want this guy, I want this guy, I want this guy. But we don't have enough picks. Well, we'll get more picks.
We'll
Don't
get more.
worry.
We'll get more.
We'll get more. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
like that's the difference. So my feeling is, you brought up Howie Roseman and Danny Briere. I think Danny, similar to Howie, is forward thinking.
Yes.
And people are going to ask, well, what's the proof in that? It's not just the drafts that the draft picks that he got. Think about Matvey Michkov.
Right.
Michkov was a draft pick that we didn't think we were going to see for 2 or 3 years
Hmm.
because he was over in Russia.
Right.
He just happened to ask for release from his team earlier than expected because he wanted to come play for the Flyers.
Love it.
That's a coup by Danny Briere. He's like, "Oh, you want to come play here now? Okay, whatever." Like, we were going to wait. That was fine. We had other things we were going to do. That's fine. No,
Yeah.
we're good. We're good. We'll
Right.
send you to play. But like, that's the difference, is that this isn't just, oh, let's put all our chips into this year.
Right.
I don't believe that this is the coup de grace for Danny Briere and the rebuild. So just imagine this. If 7 picks, 6 picks, or whatever it is for whatever they land on, whether they make a trade or not, whatever they land on, whether it's staying at 7 or moving up to get another first-round pick and going to 6, whatever they land on, James, this isn't like, okay, we're done our rebuild. Like,
Yeah.
no, they're
They're going
not.
to expand. They're going to expand it.
This means that they're like, okay, we're getting a whole bunch of talented prospects. That's what they're doing.
Right.
They're going to sit there and go, because just because they have this many this draft doesn't mean that he's not trying to still further the other drafts in the future, 2026 and
Hmm.
2027.
Yeah.
My feeling has always been this, especially from what I've seen from the Flyers this year. We've done a lot of post games together, and one of the
Oh, yeah.
things I've seen is there's some youth and talent that shines through. They haven't hit their apex, they haven't hit their prime yet,
Yep.
but they are showing some glimpses of really talented stuff, from Noah Cates to Owen Tippett to Forrester to TK's amazing, to Mitchkov, to the list goes on and on in that way.
They got a lot of talent on this team, man.
They have a lot of talent on this team. Now you're sitting here telling me you're going to add 5 to 7, maybe more, and this isn't even including free agents, James.
Right.
We're not including free agents. We're just talking draft.
Well, I'll tell you this much, Joe, too. Probably in the next couple of years or so, like, you see all the draft picks that we got this year, maybe down the road, like Danny Briere says, maybe I'll bring in like a Dylan Cousins, who, by the way, just got traded to the Senators from the Sabres. I mean, like, young players like that. I mean, obviously you want to think about like players like Loki Couture, for example, because he's like old and all that. But what the team will do eventually is become like one of those teams that, like, where they were back a few years ago, and try to go back to that relevancy once again. And I think that's going to be really good to know about what they're going to look like in the draft, and probably in future references too.
Well, keep something in mind, is that, okay, so you filled this team with young talent. That's great.
Yes.
And it is. But what the Flyers have done, and this is what I think is part of the game plan too, they will fill this team with young talent, make sure that young talent is NHL ready, and then they will go into free agency and they will hire veteran mercenaries to come in and guide these young guys to be elites. Guys like back in the day when we brought in Pronger. Guys like we brought in back in the day, Peter Forsberg, Jaromir Jagr.
I forgot about Jagr.
These guys came in and they were mercenaries. There was nothing else that that brought in other than do their job and teach these kids how to play the game right.
There's another player too that we forgot too is Timonen was a big factor
Yes.
in that too.
And like here's my logic. So we've talked about before
Hmm.
how close is this team from getting where they need to be or where they want to be. This draft that's coming up with the 7 picks
Hmm.
and the potential for how much money they're trying to unload and how much that they're going to possibly have in the future for cap space. I give this team 2 years before you start itching for them to be in the Eastern Conference Finals.
I agree.
Because I honestly think whether they spend the money and this is my next question. So we talked about one of the primary positions, primary players that the Flyers need going forward
Hmm.
is a starting goaltender.
Right.
I feel like when I'm saying starting goaltender, I feel like I'm saying linebacker for Howie Roseman back in the day. Like,
Right.
just give me a linebacker, please.
And
And
look how better we are with linebackers now.
right, who would have thought it, huh? Who sat here and said, "Can you give me a talented linebacker?" Anyone?
Right.
Just keep them. Um,
They're listening, Joe. They're
you
listening.
get yeah. Well, let me speak into the ether and the universe now. Get a starting goaltender.
Right.
And my feeling is whether that's through, and I'm going to ask you this, whether
Sure.
it's through draft or through free agency or through trade. I don't care how you get it. Preferably, I would like it to be draft.
Sure.
But because I would want to have a young guy, I would want to somehow luck out and get like the next Bobrovsky or the
Sure.
next
Yeah.
Carter Hart or whatever. Like I would want to get the next guy that's going to be the dude
Yeah.
in the between the pipes for the long haul.
Right.
My question to you is, if I'm giving you a 2-year window, and we're not giving, don't get me wrong, we're not giving Briere and Key, you know,
Keith Jones.
Keith Jones like
A
2
short
years.
leash.
Right. We're not giving them that short of a leash. But within 2 years, what would you rather do to get that starting goaltender? Because you have your eye on the league more so than I do.
Yeah.
So would you pick up a free agent goaltender? Would you pick up, is there a starting goaltender out there now that you feel like could be feasible for a trade? Do
Hmm.
you feel like that you would rather have a rookie goaltender and just hope that he progresses along quickly? What would you rather have, knowing that you want to get to where you want to go to in 2 years?
You know, Joe, it's a very good question because you think about what's been going on in the day and age of hockey. Obviously, um, there's not a lot of good goaltenders out there in the league. Obviously, because you think about say for example, the other team that lives in Pittsburgh that had the chances with their other goaltenders like the Matt Murrays and Tristan
Mhm.
Jarrys and even like the Delkoviches now. But maybe what you need to do, I mean, because I guess there's a lot of teams that are doing this with goaltenders, especially trying to build up to the highest standard. You probably have to draft a goaltender to see what they look like because that's probably the place to go. I'm not saying that like the free agency market's like bad for goaltenders, but for me, I think like you probably have to draft a player you have to draft a goaltender in the draft like you did with Carter Hart and Bobrovsky, and I think that's probably where you had to go with this because you think about sometimes with the scenario of getting a free agency goaltender like 14, 15 years ago when we brought in Briskalov and 2 years later he was shipped off and shipped out. So for me, I would say you probably have to draft a goaltender to try to build around your future like you did with Hart and maybe what you were supposed to do with Bobrovsky too, Joe.
And like with the free agency, there was another one that felt like it was short lived. Was Elliott when we
Right.
signed Elliott?
That's
It
true.
it just felt very short lived. It felt very like it almost stymied the growth of the team. And I feel
Yeah.
like if you're already bringing in these young nucleus, bring in a young goaltender to grow with these kids. Like,
Yeah.
make the team. We talked about it earlier with the Phillies.
Hmm.
Make it be familiar faces.
Yeah.
Let these kids grow together. Um, you know,
So where you go at? Would you say draft a goaltender, or you bring in a free agent?
I want to draft a goaltender. I want to bring in a
I
kid.
agree.
And look, we're giving it 2 years. So even if you draft him this year, I'm giving him a year of a mulligan. Like
Yeah.
I'm giving him a year to kind of get his feet wet, to prove what he can do, to upgrade his skill set, to all of that. Like I'm giving him a mulligan in his rookie year. Now look, does that mean I want him to stink? No, but it means that I'm not putting the pressure on him that I think he should have a lower GAA than 2.00. Like, no, like relax. Like, I want to see that the kid's got flashes.
Right.
I want to see the potential, just like I see in Mitchkov. Like,
Sure.
me and you have talked about it on several occasions. Like, this guy shows flashes of greatness, and he's just touching the surface of what he is capable of doing. And that makes any Flyers fan, including me and you, excited.
Oh yeah.
By the way, the guy that they brought over in that Lawton trade was another Russian, by the
There
way.
you go.
So I'm telling you, Briere is trying to rebuild or is trying to build his version of the Russian Five
Yeah.
on this team. So
That
be
was the
ready.
red. That was the Red Wings of the early '90s with
Oh
them.
yeah. Yep.
I mean, you think about it. I mean, yeah, dude, that's crazy.
The team that crushed my hopes and dreams when we went to the Stanley Cup Finals and we got them. And I
Yeah.
just went, really? Why do we have to get them?
Yeah.
Like any other team, not them.
Well, I mean, it's kind of like the scenario with Ovechkin. Like probably like what it wasn't like the Russian Five. It was probably like the Russian Three with Backstrom and Simmon and all that too.
Yeah,
So
but I mean,
same kind of uniqueness of like
but
what they're
even
trying
with
to do.
Detroit, it felt like there was one Russian after the other Russian after the other Russian. It was like, good grief.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in a James Bond movie. It's like
Yeah.
with all
Or
these
probably
Russians.
Jason Statham, like depending
Yeah,
on what side of the fence you're on.
right. Well, one of the other reasons we talked about like the draft picks that are coming up, the nucleus. We talked about like what we would do to get a goaltender that we need as a starting goaltender, and that 2 year window that me and you are potentially putting on to see how this team progresses. The next question is a kind of a hot button issue. And I gotta ask, and I think we both have to kind of put it out there. But James, John Tortorella, is
Right.
he going to be your head coach for by the end of the season 2027?
Man, I hope so. I mean, look, I know I understand how much you're on the fence about Tortorella, and I know there's a lot of people on the post game show on the fence about him too. But I look. I mean, I'm not saying that it's gonna. If they say, for example, he's on the hot seat either this year, next year, or the year after. Um, we all know what happened with Laviolette. We all know how when we let him go, and 2 years later, he was in the Stanley Cup final, or maybe 3 years, depending on the situation. But the thing about it too is that I like what Tortorella does with the team. I mean, sure, he has his flaws here and there, and Evan Flow sometimes even though sometimes a little bit of a head scratcher when he doesn't call a timeout when it's needed to try to calm the team down after like the last couple games that they felt like, and I'm thinking like, okay, now we have to get back on track here and try to tell him to take a deep breath and all that. But for me, I mean, I would like to see Tortorella stick around until 2027, but it depends on what they're going to look like with Tortorella on the helm. But the one guy that we brought up on the post-game show actually had good candidates that could be maybe if Tortorella isn't the guy, there could be a couple guys in the works that could be a very good candidate to replace Tortorella if it goes south.
So I've been on the fence with this for a couple months, and I've gone back.
I'm
and
on the
forth.
fence too, Joe. No, don't question about it.
I've been going back and forth I feel like, I can't make up my mind because in one way I understand that John Tortorella is a great coach. And
Hmm.
but on another hand, I get infuriated by some of the lack of like good decision making that he makes.
Sure.
And this is the way I feel like I'm taking the safe route here. I feel like I'm kind of picking in between.
Hmm.
Um I wouldn't fire John Tortorella. I wouldn't even not want him as my coach by 2027.
Right.
This is what I would want. Rather than what the Sixers did with Brett Brown, where you get rid of Brett Brown and you bring in another veteran head coach in Doc Rivers.
Sure.
I would rather know that if John Tortorella is the placeholder coach for now, I would want to bring in like an assistant or two coach of his
Hmm.
that he would want to be the heir apparent.
Right.
I would want to make sure that, like, okay, John is the coach now, but this dude is the heir apparent. And
Hmm.
we know that. So by 2027, if he's like, okay, I'm the second most winningest coach in NHL history, or yeah, like I'm ready to hang him up.
Right.
Okay, us as Flyers fans don't hit the panic button because we're like, well, who's our next coach going to be? Because
Right.
we already know who it is.
Right.
The guy's been in the room. The guy is familiar with the players. The players are familiar with the guy. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I essentially want. I want a guy that can be groomed
Right. I mean,
at,
that's the thing
from
too.
underneath John Tortorella.
Yeah, that's the thing too. I mean, you think about it. I mean, there's like a couple guys that are in the works, depending on if Tortorella doesn't go down that road, down that route rather. Um, Maybe like Rocky Thompson will be one guy that you can like Tortorella could teach you up to become the coach someday. There's a couple of coaches out there that like Nancy Leon brought up on a couple days ago. A couple days ago, like obviously like a Bruce Boudreau could be one guy. Gerard Gallant from the former Panthers coach is another one. He said also Joe Quenneville could be another good candidate too.
Right.
But the difference is with Joe Quenneville, I mean, no disrespect to, I mean, it was very good candidates that he brought up. But Quenneville, I mean, we're talking like 10 years ago since he won a Stanley Cup last. And who knows how long, I mean, who knows if he wants to start coaching again, depending on what the situation is with that. But
Well,
I don't know.
I even bring it up, and maybe you'll have to go back into your hockey encyclopedia in your brain of yours. But like back
Right.
when the Flyers had like Lindros and Renberg and Leclerc,
Hmm.
before John Stevens, and
Right.
he's kind of my point. But before John Stevens, there was a coach for the Flyers. I don't recall who that was at the time.
Oh, it was Ken Hitchcock.
Ken Hitchcock. Okay. Um, so you go from Ken Hitchcock, and then you don't go and look around the league for what your next coach is. You go and you bring in John Stevens,
Right.
that coach for your AHL affiliate, Philadelphia Phantoms. So why did you make that move? Because John Stevens at the time had coached up a lot of the players that were already called up for the Flyers
And
at
mind
the
you, too, he
time.
won a Calder Cup around that same time too.
Right. So he was proven. He was, he had already been there developing these guys.
Right.
He already had a relationship with some of these guys. So, you got to kind of think along that lines that worked out well. Now, I was disappointed that they didn't hold on to Stevens longer, but the idea that you can do that successfully, like I don't care if it's the AHL guy. I don't care. I mean, and keep something in mind. It was brought up a couple weeks ago when the Flyers played the Penguins. The
Hmm.
the the coach that's on the Penguins now, the head coach for the Penguins now, was a former John Tortorella assistant coach.
Yep.
So John Tortorella does have a coaching tree.
Yeah.
All I'm asking for is have him have a good coaching assistant coach, but keep that dude in the building.
Right.
Make him the heir apparent because I think that'll mitigate a lot of the frustration that some of the fans that are on the fence with John Tortorella. It might mitigate some of that because we're still in rebuild mode. Let
Right.
John Tortorella work these guys hard,
Hmm.
build these guys up. He's not going to win a Stanley Cup. We know
No,
that, but
no.
but
Sadly.
I think he knows that.
Hmm.
And that being said, at least if you had an heir apparent, you can that heir apparent knows that when he is put in charge, when John steps down and he is put in charge, boy, is he going to have a hell of a team to coach, be able to coach.
Hmm.
And he's going to be in a great position to succeed. So put your not like Danny Briere and Keith Jones have are trying to put this team in the right position to succeed, from the players to the front office to the personnel to the trainers to whatever. Put the coaching staff in the right position to win too, and put them in the right position to succeed too. And I think that's the best way to do it.
Right.
Um, so when it comes to the question of John Tortorella stay or go, I'm saying stay for now, only because honestly, I don't want to restart with
Somebody
another
new.
coach. Yeah, I just don't. I think you go with what's gotten you here so far.
Yeah.
The momentum is growing. The stock is rising.
Hmm.
Regardless of them not making the playoffs or not, the stock is still rising. John Tortorella is not ruining these guys.
No.
And so and these guys are still playing with fire and heart. But there needs to be a strategy.
Right.
That there needs to be a plan, a long-term plan as far as the coaching is concerned in order for this to be productive after that, after we get the players in place.
Right.
After we get that goaltender, after we get more like stud players in place. I mean, I'm telling you, like when I heard that news about the 7 draft picks, James, my mind was like, man, I want to go on to online and look at like the prospects that are coming out, and I
Yeah.
want to go shopping. Like
Yeah.
I want that guy, I want that guy, I want
Yeah.
that guy, and it's like
Yeah.
I literally was like, I want a goaltender and I
Yep.
want 2 defensemen that are at least 6'4" tall.
Oh.
A-
Oh. Hell yeah.
and it's like no big deal. It's like if
Right.
I was sitting there in the room with Keith Jones and Danny Briere, like, oh, that's all? Just a starting goaltender and 2 defensemen that are giants?
Yeah.
That's
No big.
all?
No
No
big deal.
big deal.
Yeah. Right.
They'll be like, yeah, sure, we'll work on that. Like,
Yeah.
who's this guy?
Definitely. Definitely.
But like that's where I'm kind of going with this is that this nucleus looks strong. But you know
Right.
what? Before we go, I wanted to like let everyone also in on another sponsor that we have. It's for the Phillies, but you can get Flyers gear, you can get Eagles gear, you can get if you want to get Sixers gear. But
Oh. Okay.
you can get any kind of gear for any of your sports teams. March Madness is coming up. Go to rallyhouse.com. James will tell you more about it. Go to rallyhouse.com today and get whatever you need for any sports need you need. James, tell them more about it.
Yeah, Joe. Today's show is sponsored by our friends. Before we wrap up here, today's show is sponsored by our friends over at rallyhouse.com. Hey, Philly fanatics, rallyhouse.com is your destination for all things Philadelphia Phillies. From hats to jerseys, don't worry. We got you covered. Everything you need and get you ready for the upcoming Phillies season, in style. And now you can pick up and get it delivered fast by scanning the QR code at the bottom of your screen right next to Bryce Harper, and a proud sponsor to the Philadelphia Phillies this season. That is at rallyhouse.com, or visit them online at rallyhouse.com today.
So, James, before we go, there's one last question about the Flyers.
Sure.
And this is a question I think we both kind of answered, but I'm hoping that either one of us or both of us will have a little bit more of an optimistic answer than what we think.
Mm.
We're coming down to the home stretch of the Flyers season.
Yeah.
We would like to see if this team could make the playoffs, but I got to ask you, as the guy who's the hockey aficionado on this show,
Yeah.
do you think the Philadelphia Flyers will squeak into the playoffs this season?
Ah, man. I mean, I would love to see it. I would love to see it, Joe. I really do. Um, I think it's going to be a little bit of a tall task, obviously, depending on what they do here today against Seattle. So, I mean, but then nobody would have expected the Flyers to be in 2010 to go into to get back into the postseason on the last game of the season and went on that run like they had. Not saying they're going to go fall all out in the Stanley Cup Finals this year, God forbid, but yeah, I mean, I would say they would, but they have to start winning it now because obviously, depending on what Columbus and Detroit are doing, because they continue to dominate once and for all. I think Detroit won again last night, and I think Columbus won a couple nights ago, or Columbus lost a couple nights ago. So, I mean, it's going to be a real tall task to climb, but if they can get some wins out of it, that will be something that will be more of a positive going into next year. But I hate to say it, I love watching this team. They're really fun to watch, but I think it's going to be too close to comfort. Going to admit, Joe.
So, I ultimately I have been with you for the most part when
Yeah,
it comes down to all of that because
yeah,
I've seen some really bad hockey. I've seen some really good hockey from this
hmm
team. Um, and I'll be honest. After the last couple seasons, I didn't think seeing really good hockey from this team would ever be in the cards in the near future. And I am glad to say I was wrong about that. That being
as the
said,
one.
that being said, I feel like Boucher has said this a couple times on the air, and I kind of tend to agree with him. If you are able to put a 5 or 6 game win streak together,
Hmm.
and you get lucky with the other teams that are around you, and they drop a couple, the whole landscape changes. Five or
Yeah,
6 game win streak might not seem like a lot to a lot of people, but that's 10 or 12 points. And that can make all the difference, really.
hmm
Especially if like teams like Columbus and Detroit that are around us in that final spot, if we're putting up 10 or 12 points and these guys are dropping 2 out of 4, only winning 2 out of the 6 games and going 2-4, like that's gonna make a big difference. That's gonna make the Flyers leap into that spot. And so for me, it's yeah, I'm skeptical, but I'm cautiously optimistic because I've counted this team out from day one with this season, and
yeah,
they've surprised me.
yeah.
So I'm guessing I'm asking them to surprise me again
Right.
and make a run, even if it's by doing 5 or 6 game win streaks, make a run and make that damn playoffs and just see what happens. Like I'm not saying it's like you said. I'm not saying they're going to make all this noise and they're going to be like the sneaky dark horse going into the playoffs. No. But like what I'm saying is I want to see them take that step to get to the playoffs and say, okay, let's get playoff experience now, boys.
Yep.
Let's do it now.
Let's make the
And
magic happen. Yep.
yeah, and so, you know, 5 or 6 game win streak is not absurd. It's not unheard of. The most that they've had this season is 3. So, yeah, it's a tall task to double that, but you got to start somewhere and you got to start building. If you're going to build momentum to the playoffs, you got to start doing it now. And, you brought it up earlier. Starting with the Kraken, that's going to be important. Then you got the Devils tomorrow. So, you got to take care of what's in front of you. And you still have a path to the playoffs.
Right.
Like it's not done, but it's a tough path. It's a difficult path, but it's not done.
Yeah. Job's not done.
But you know what is done? We're done.
Yeah.
For the Pattison Ave Sports Show, I want to thank everybody for joining us. I want to thank James Gorza for being a great producer. Pat Bernard, we will catch up with you again at another point in time, my friend. Join us next week where we will have our special guest Joe Sullivan,
Sully.
who is going to be joining us on Stream Punk Entertainment. He's a new addition to the network. He will be discussing all things off season with the Eagles, talking a little Phillies baseball, maybe even Sixers, and much more. He'll also be talking a little bit about his show that'll be upcoming called Old School, talking about old school sports teams, different topics like comparing different eras. It's going to be a fun time with Sully on the show next week. So
Looking forward to it, brother.
Make sure to join us next week, next Saturday at 9 a.m. For my great producer, James Scorzin, my name is Joe Marks. Philly, it's a jam-packed sports weekend with 2 Flyers games and a Sixers game. Union, go enjoy it. It's going to be warm out. Go have a great weekend, and let's go Flyers. Let's go Phillies. And that's all for us. Have a great day, everybody. We're out.
See ya.